Baker Roshi has a wonderful saying that enlightenment is an accident. Meditation makes you accident prone. That's what ethics does. It makes you accident prone in that sense. It sets up the conditions where it's more likely for you to recognize your ever-present condition. Ben Hogan was a great golfer, probably the first really truly great superhero in golf. And Mike Murphy told me this story, and I've told it a lot. The press used to ask Ben Hogan all the time, I mean, you keep winning like that, you keep winning. How do you do it? And he would always say, it's just luck, honest, it's just luck. And he was known for practicing like 10 hours a day. And the press would always say, yeah, but you practice all the time. And he says, the more you practice, the luckier you get. That's what ethics is. It's not going to cause you to awaken. It's relative bodhicitta. The practice of compassion, for example, is a way that you make the dream state more conducive to waking up. But the most you're going to get out of the dream is a happy dream. And that's what ethics can do. But if people often, when spiritual teachers are asked, if I had to do just one practice, what should I do? They'll often say, do ethical practice. I mean, it's very, very powerful. In the Mahayana tradition, for example, there's Vipassana in the 9 yanas, the 9 stages of development according to Vajrayana. The first and foundation stage is concentration of the mind and mindfulness practice. And that constitutes the whole first 2 stages, which are generally somewhat unflatteringly called Hinayana. And then the next Mahayana stage is devoted to a type of ethical exchange of self and other. It's an ethical practice called Tonglen. We actually visualize yourself exchanging yourself with others and giving them all of the love and compassion and understanding that you have, and you take all of their suffering and pain into you. And that's held to be sometimes 10 times more effective at making it more likely that you'll have an accident called Satori. So we don't want to have the notion that you're going to be doing these practices and that's going to lead to enlightenment, because that's just going to strengthen the seeking mind. That's going to strengthen the notion that your ego can do something to get God to respond. No, I don't think so. What it is going to do is wear your ass out, and then God can slip in when you're not looking. So that's in that sense alone, that's a very, very powerful set of practices. Probably the 2 conditions most helpful for the great accident known as awakening is some sort of mindful training in the upper left quadrant and some sort of ethical training in the lower left. That's kind of the easiest way to summarize what we're doing. And it's very important, particularly, that people really do understand that ethics is this container for the types of higher realizations that can occur, particularly given what's happened over the last 10, 20, 30 years, where we had a little bit of a misunderstanding about what be here now meant and beyond good and evil and crazy wisdom and all of that somehow meant that since enlightenment was beyond ethics, and in a certain sense it is, that I don't have to act ethical. But not acting ethical is still dualistic. In other words, that's not really beyond anything. That's just the photographic negative of being ethical. And the photographic negative of being ethical is being an asshole. So the whole notion is that you could just be an egocentric dolt and do anything you wanted, and somehow that dharma bum attitude was the same as absolute bodhicitta. It's not. It's just the photographic negative of relative bodhicitta. And unethical behavior doesn't get you enlightened. It gets you a nightmare, gets you the unhappy dream. So it's the worst of all possible worlds paraded under this crazy wisdom notion. By the way, there is no crazy wisdom tradition in the East. It was invented by 3 American drunken womanizing teachers to rationalize their behavior. And I'm very fond of these guys, incidentally, some of my very dear friends. But really, we have to be very, very careful about rationalizing our egoic impulses as if that's transegoic. So absolute bodhicitta is just that, it's absolute. So it's not just beyond, you can't say it's beyond good and evil, because it's beyond even that. In other words, you can't characterize it in any dualistic way at all. In ever-present witnessing, if a virtuous act arises, then that's arising in non-dual mind. If an unvirtuous act arises, then that's equally arising in non-dual mind. Neither one of those are closer. The only advantage of the virtuous act is it's going to make it more likely that you can recognize this. But neither one of them are getting closer to that ever-present state that embraces everything, literally everything that's arising. So the ozone hole, depletion, unvirtuous acts, all of those arise equally in the great perfection. So that's not what we're talking about. Ethical acts are not a way to install you in the great perfection. It's a way, like I say, to arrange your relative dream state such that it's more likely you will wake up. But it's not going to cause that. And the last reason, as I say, just to repeat, it's not going to cause it, is it's not going to bring anything into your awareness that isn't already in your awareness right now. 100% of the enlightened mind is in your awareness right now. The problem is there's so many distractions you don't recognize that. So you think you have to do something in order to get this enlightened mind to be present. But the enlightened mind, like I say, is that which is spontaneously hearing my voice. It's spontaneously seeing all the sights that are arising right now. You don't have to make any effort for this to happen. Everything right now in this room is arising in your awareness effortlessly, spontaneously. That awareness that you already have, that hears my voice, sees these sights, that is the ever-present I amness state that you are. You tend to get caught up in these objects that come and go, and you think, oh, if I do something to this object, somehow I'm going to get in touch with the seer of that object. It doesn't have anything to do with it. But if you act ethically with these objects, then they're going to get as healthy as they can get, they're going to get as smooth as they can get, as much goodness as you can get, and that's going to let you relax your frenetic grasping at these passing objects long enough that you might recognize I amness. So that's yet another reason that ethical behavior is a very, very crucial component of a stable realization. The traditions, quite the opposite of having crazy wisdom, they're pretty much unanimous. There are three foundations to the enlightened or awakened life: sila, jhana, prajna. Morality, meditation, awakening. And the foundation is moral or ethical behavior. Now let me say just a very brief sentence or two about the difference between ethics and morals. Technically, there's a distinction between ethics and morals, and ethics is more a relative term, and morals is more kind of a universalist term. So ethics, again, technically, now we're going to use it a little bit more loosely here, but ethics means whatever the ethos of a group is. So I'll give a really harsh example. If you're in the KKK, or if you're in the Nazis, and then you're acting according to the beliefs of that group, then you're acting ethically, according to the beliefs of that group. But you might not be acting morally. Okay? So ethics tends to mean the ethos of a culture, no matter whether it's actually moral or not. So there's an ethos of lawyers, let's say, that not many people find very moral. Typical example. We're going to use them kind of interchangeably, but it is important to notice that there really are, that there are some important differences here. As far as we can tell, moral stages of development, the very broad, deep structures, have a general universality to them. But within each of these moral stages, there are all sorts of different ethoses that are possible within each of those.